Hi, everyone. I'm Samira. I'm host of this podcast, Eat Better, and founder of the Heather app. This podcast is all about food and its effects on lifestyle. It's focused on storytelling and giving practical, simple tips. Today, I'm speaking with Charissa, also known as the Roasted Veggie on Instagram, YouTube, and other social platforms. Charissa is a registered dietitian with a wealth of knowledge who has amassed a social following, all while staying true to her principles of promoting scientific and sustainable health and diet advice. I hope that you enjoy. Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining the Eat Better podcast. So, your mission statement is that you want to help women find their healthiest food balance free of guilt, stress, or restriction. Why do you think food has become associated with these negative things? And why haven't we associated it with other positive things like nourishment, like vibrance, energy, health, all these things?
So I thought this was a fabulous question to start it off because I think just looking back on my own experiences and just like where I have come from, where, I'm a registered dietitian by training and I have been working with women for the past couple of years and speaking to like hundreds, thousands of women online and even in person whenever I counsel them and like help them with their nutrition. We all kind of come from a background of, our environment, the way we grew up, the way our family members talked about food, the way that we spoke about food, the way we looked at ourselves in the mirror, the way social media or any
Mm-hmm.
magazines growing up or TV shows, like what is described as healthy and like what you should be like in the epitomal optimal version of yourself is often online seen as just a very extreme version of health. So a lot of times I feel like growing up at least, um, social media will portray women being extremely, extremely lean, and that's okay. Like sometimes, people are genetically predisposed to that, but sometimes behind the scenes, we don't really know how women get to that point. And then, we'll see, what I eat in a days. And sometimes now that might not even be truly there, what I eat in a days. And that can be very like fake content out there. And so I think there's a lot of misinformation and mistrust that as a viewer that you're consuming this content where it's like that's not really true health or true ways of nourishment. And I think there's like a double-edged sword with it, right? So like I see food and nutrition as another biological physiological factor of our life, right? Much
Mm-hmm.
like going to the bathroom or breathing. But a lot of people, will see it as like a way to like change their body to fit a
Mm-hmm.
certain aesthetic ideal. And I think that's where that fear and disconnect kind of comes from when people think of like food as like feeling guilty about it or like feel like they need to
Mm-hmm.
restrict something. And that pendulum kind of switches between like, restriction, low calorie intake, improper nourishment to like, binging, kind of overdoing it and feeling out of control
Mm-hmm.
around food. So like, I think that's kind of where it all stems from, like what we see and what we absorb, like within our own environment, our media, is kind of
Mm-hmm.
why we have this disingenuine and like misguided view on nutrition and food.
You said so many powerful things
I
there.
know, I said a lot.
Um,
I'm sorry.
no, I love it. I want to make sure I follow up on each one. First, do you think that our culture, the way women's relationship with food differs from men's? It seems like for women, it's much more of a sensitive topic. Like how women view their relationship with food or how they monitor it and manage it and control it? How's it different from men, you think? How has our culture like made that happen?
So it's so interesting because I primarily work with women, but men are definitely not avoidant of these issues as well. I think just
Mm.
we might perceive things a little bit differently. Like for example, what do you think of like an ideal woman healthy woman, like what does that look like? And I think I was actually a part of a webinar like a couple weeks ago, and they asked this exact question, and they asked the participants to like put it in the comments, like what does a healthy woman look like? And a lot of the comments were like tan, toned,
Mm-hmm.
lean, but like not too bulky, but like has some muscle definition, and like, long, beautiful hair, like light eyes. So like all those different ideals, but then like they ask the same for what is the male version of that? Like, what does that
Mm-hmm.
look like? What do we like picture when we see that? And it's like, also like tall, dark, handsome, like muscle definition, feeling strong, like, all that stuff. And I don't think men are devoid of these issues. I think
Mm-hmm.
though, like social media has also drifted into a different narrative nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
but growing up, I definitely think the narrative really pushed like very thin, white females as being the epitome of like health. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and men just, kind of has a little bit more leeway. I think women aren't as honed in on like, oh, my man has to look like this. Like I kind of like to have a little fluff, wherever. And like women aren't as attracted or connected to that. But I definitely don't think that men are devoid of these issues. And I think that maybe the environment of, male friends and like the male stereotype of
Mm-hmm.
them not having as much feelings for their body or, being open to share these feelings about that. I think women are just more open to sharing and realizing that there's stuff that we do need to work on as a society.
That's a really good point. I'm also thinking of that one of those stereotypical sayings in the past where it was like women get judged based on how they look and men get judged based on like what they achieve. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
that's so powerful.
Yeah. And then you said social media, what I eat in a day and these things, right? Um, I think people forget that there's no body that upholds people to a set of truth or ethic when it comes to posting social media content, right? And the
Yeah.
things that drive the most engagement are the most controversial things. What do you think of like being in that world? Do you ever see yourself like being pulled in different directions by these factors, like metrics or whatever. Yeah, how do you deal with that?
So for virality, it's interesting because I mean, you can ask all my friends too, like me starting a social media and starting a platform, like I never saw it as a way to go viral. I just like
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to share my 2 cents and like my scientific background and education and experiences with people. And if that resonated with people, that's amazing. Like I never really saw
Mm-hmm.
it getting to this like whole big platform. But yeah, what you see on social media, the most extremes go viral. And I think that's what people also associate, going back to like that first question of like, this is kind of what they associate of like, is what I should be doing to be healthy. And it could be eating raw liver. It could be eating, like absolutely nothing or like completely
Yeah.
everything uncooked or, all these things. And it just, I never really want to subject myself to doing things that I don't agree with and
Mm-hmm.
aren't also scientifically backed just to gain virality and going,
Right.
to the masses and saying like, yeah, my video reached like 18 million views. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care about that, but I definitely think like there's power in virality. So if we can actually spread the messages of like, hardcore nutrition foundations that are just like rooted in science and realisticness, I think
Mm-hmm.
that would be amazing. So this is kind of why I also like started my platform and just made sure that, amidst all this virality extremes, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe my video will be put forth and offer another perspective to it.
That's amazing that like you hold yourself to your own code of values and
Yeah.
standards. I wish more people did that. Speaking of like, yeah, trendy stuff, have you noticed how like the carnivore diet is essentially trending now and everyone like literally like non-science backed things, like just the average Joe starts
Yeah.
promoting the carnivore diet. Like there's this girl that posts like every single day for multiple meals like eating the carnivore diet. Like, yeah, what do you think of stuff like that?
I just like a part of me also like health professional wise, I'm like Okay, whenever you kind of post about what you're doing, that's fine. But I think the problem and disconnect is where, well, for me, is when you push it onto other people saying that this will help cure them, this will help
Yeah.
them. Where in nutrition, everything is so individualized. We all have our own gut microbiome, we all have our own metabolism,
Hmm.
we all have our own preferences, health conditions, genetic predispositions. So for people to kind of push one
Hmm.
way of eating, especially something like pretty extreme as like
Yeah.
carnivore, that often kind of goes against what scientific
Hmm.
bodies, recommend to the general healthful population. It is kind of alarming to me. And it is still surprising, even though, I've seen so much viral content and stuff and carnivore advocates where I'm just still so surprised that people can do this and like subject themselves to it. But, I've been there. I have gone through my own struggles of hopping on and off certain diets because I thought and believed that these people telling me that it would help me and like make me feel better and like,
Hmm.
fulfill me with all these promises that they say. But yeah, it's always baffling what the media comes up with.
It's so tricky because, like our psychology as humans, like if someone goes on their platform and says with a lot of assertion and confidence that
Yes,
something is right, people are gonna listen to them, even though like as you become more knowledgeable, right? Like your breadth of knowledge increases. Like you just said, you realize like things are way more intricate and you can't just like but then if you like, I think all the knowledgeable people, right? They know that they can't say certain things because it's not
exactly.
true. And then all the ignorant people are just like really confident in their ignorance.
Yeah, like the bold statements. And,
Yeah.
it kind of like, so I am 26 years old, and like a lot of my friends obviously are in like the workforce and working. And we always kind of talk about how as we grow older, and still we're pretty young entering the workforce, we're not like, have years and like decades of experience, but we kind of have talked about that. There are some people in the workplace where sometimes they say things so confidently, and in the moment, like you just believe them because they are just so confident and like bold with their statements, which makes things better. Like, who wants to kind of sit and debate a topic for forever? Like, nothing kind of gets done. So I can see the appeal of someone just being like,
Hmm.
this is what you need to do. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Boom. It kind of
Hmm.
makes things easy, but when it comes to your health and nutrition, like it really isn't. And I think like if you do have the investment towards it and the finances and stuff to put in time and energy into getting individualistic care, I think that's like the best thing that you can do because social media and is not it.
What would be individualized care like? Could you describe that? If
Yeah.
someone wanted to do that.
Yeah, so individualized care, when I say that, I mean like getting in touch with a health professional. So someone that has like, actual education in what they're talking about and also training in coaching people. So I
Hmm.
say registered dietitian is always your go-to. There's like we are a whole like profession that is regulated and has like these certain criteria to hit in order to
Hmm.
become a registered dietitian, which involves bachelor's degree, master's degree
Hmm.
now in 2024, and
Oh
1,200 hours
wow.
of supervised practice, like working in clinical, like so working in hospitals, working in like food systems, which is like school cafeteria lunches or like,
Hmm.
big corporations where like food is presented, and also like community work. So think about like your food banks, your, everything
Hmm.
else in between. So there's a lot of backing to go with our title. And I think you cannot steer wrong with someone that actually has that level of training versus someone that's just like passionate about it and has their own anecdotal personal experience of why
How do
that,
you
worked for them. Go ahead.
how do you find a dietitian? Like I guess my own experience in the past, I'm not a
Hmm.
dietitian, right? And
Hmm.
I've always been like very conscious of my health, but dietitians
Yeah.
seem really inaccessible to me for some reason. Like I can't think of a platform right now where I could go on it and it would match or like give me a
That's true.
dietitian. I feel like I
Yeah.
would have to Google it and then I'd have to Google rates and then I'd have to make a comparison chart and all these things, like what do you
Yeah.
recommend people like is there a tool that makes it easier now?
So that's a very good question. I think as this profession grows, because we are a pretty newer profession, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Like we didn't really have an accrediting body until the 80s, so like 1980s.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of growth that still needs to be done with the profession. And I think one area of growth we could do is the way that we market ourselves and increasing our
Mm-hmm.
accessibility to people. And I think that's actually another form of like why it is actually very common in my schooling, like even in undergrad and grad school, like people always kind
Mm-hmm.
of had like a food page because we're passionate
Mm-hmm.
about it. And I think social media, there is that pro to it where you can gain accessible information by people that post.
Mm-hmm.
So it's strange for me to actually say that maybe social media is
Okay.
actually a way for you to get in touch with someone because then you can understand like their vibe, their philosophy,
Right.
because we are also trying to market like who is our exact audience. Like, are you dealing with PCOS? Are you dealing with hormonal struggles? Are you
Mm.
dealing with like you want to lose weight in a healthy way? Are you looking for, eating disorder help? Like a lot of days now in our society, they will definitely have a social media platform that I feel like is their first point touch of awareness. But like you
Yeah.
said, I can
Okay.
see like Google, like it might be really hard, or you can
Mm-hmm.
ask like your main PCP if they have a recommendation, and there will be some dietitians that are covered by insurance too, that maybe your doctor will have ties with and will be able to recommend a registered dietitian for you and your also
Okay.
specific needs. So,
And
yeah, go
when
ahead.
someone works with a registered dietitian, is it a relationship that spans like through the years, or is it usually like just a few sessions really gives you like a great foundation for your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah. So that all depends on, I think, the person and the
Okay.
practitioner. For me personally, I have been with people for 2 years and
Okay.
we see each other. In the beginning, it was like maybe twice a month, so every other week. And then now it's kind of like weaning off a little bit, but they just still want to see me for just
Mhm.
maintenance. But, I have had people too that have 3 sessions with me over the course of only like 1 or 2 months, and they already feel like
Mhm.
instantly better and they want to be independent with it. And I'm like, okay, like that's
Mhm.
wonderful. So I think that really just depends on that person's specific goals, if how fast they reach it, like if they have any barriers to do it, if they need extra support, and how much that practitioner is also providing for them.
Okay, yeah, it definitely seems like this is an investment, which at the beginning, a lot of people are hesitant because
Yeah.
at the beginning it requires like an initial investment, but I feel like it's one of those things that like has so many long-term benefits, like
Yeah.
compounded things to your life that if you break it down, it's like nothing, right? But it's so hard
Yeah.
for people to capture that. So I really hope in the future, like more and more people like use dietitians to actually like
Yeah.
manage their health rather than just social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like I just, want to preface that there are a lot of dietitians too that are
Mhm.
backed by insurance. And so some
Mhm.
people don't even have to pay for dietitian
Okay.
services, but
Okay.
depending on the insurance that they have. But, I will say um that there are dietitians too that are more out of pocket and will just need that initial, you know, all upfront cost or kind of split between payment plans and stuff, which definitely can get costly and an
Okay.
investment towards the future.
Okay, cool. Good
Yeah.
reminder. And then I kind of want to ask why you went into the field, why you studied. I kind of looked into it because I was like, oh, so I studied like political science and computer science, but
Very
I'm
cool.
increasingly really interested in food. And I
Yeah.
had this impression that it would just be like a 2-year program. And then I saw it's like, nope, you need to do like a 4-year bachelor's
Yeah.
program. And now you said you have to do a master's.
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit about your motivations, like selecting this profession? Yeah, how did that
Yeah.
happen?
So my journey definitely has some relatability towards other dietitians that I've spoken to and like are in my close-knit circle. I was always interested in nutrition as far as like when I was little, when I was like 12 years old. I've always been fascinated with cooking, and I kind of grew up in a family. I'm Filipino, and we're very blunt with how we kind of talk about food and body. So like I was kind of around family members that would call out like oh, like Teresa, you're so chubby, but like in like a cute, endearing
Mm,
way, but like that kind of like stuck with me
mm,
for like me whenever I look in the mirror and I'm like, wait, yeah, like maybe I am chubby or like a chubbier kid or like, I was in sports a lot, so I was around other girls, like, and you can like say like, oh, well, that girl doesn't look like me or like I'm a little bit bigger than the other girls, like why is that? And like,
mhm,
as you kind of get older, like you realize, oh, yeah, like you can change your body by
mhm,
your food intake and how much you exercise or like the energy that you
mhm,
expend. So back like even in middle school, high school, I was like on YouTube doing my little research.
mm,
And at that point it was like, Victoria's Secret Angels, Victoria's Secret
mhm.
Fashion Show, like even like all these other health professionals that don't I wouldn't call them health professionals, actually health influencers that would be like, just eat bananas, like, no
Oh my
carbs,
God, the
like just
banana girl.
yes, like that. Yeah, she would always like have her abs out, and I'd be like, okay, she only eats bananas or like fruits. Like, okay, that's what I need to do to get abs. And you know what?
Oh
You're
my
young, you
God.
don't know any better. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of like, oh, like this is what health is. I'm interested in this. So I kind of took the independence, and as little as like 15, 16, when I was able to kind of dictate food and like cook at home a little bit more, I started kind of eating lean proteins, vegetables,
Mm,
fruit shakes, like very low carb, like said no to rice and bread and desserts and stuff like that. And I really definitely saw the weight drop. I felt like
mhm,
more confident in like my body and just like my overall health, but that kind of only lasted like a small little bit. And then that
mhm,
kind of translated to me feeling a little bit more out of control with cravings. Like that undernourishment was really catching up where I was just like my mood swings
mm,
were crazy, low energy. Like there were times where like days where I would just lay in bed because I just like didn't feel like doing
mm,
anything. And that's very not me. Like I like to experience things. I
mm,
like to do things in life. So that was just like a very interesting time. But I thought like, okay, if I can do it, I want to teach other people to do that. So
mm,
I kind of during senior year of high school, I was like, okay, like this is what I want to do. I know I want to be in food. I do love science. Like I also like cooking. Like what is a scientific way to cook more? Like help people eat better. And dietetics popped up, and that's like our major, that's our profession. And
mhm,
so I kind of already knew right off the bat that I wanted to be a dietitian. And I was like, okay, sweet. My parents are on board. It's scientific enough for them. Like, we're good on that end. So that's how I decided to become it. And yeah, I don't think I was prepared for what I was going to learn in the program I
mhm,
was in. I'm still to this day so thankful of my university. I went to the University of Florida, and their dietetics
mm,
program is absolutely incredible.
mm,
And we got exposed to so many different experiences and special speakers, and our professors were amazing. And we have like intense curricula of like organic chemistry, biochemistry, like all
mm,
these really deep-rooted science classes. And it was a wonderful experience. But that definitely changed my outlook on what health is and
mm,
how different people need different things. And so
mm,
that is kind of what changed my philosophy into balance and,
mm.
eating things with mindfulness, but also just like not stressing too much about it.
That's amazing that you knew so young what you wanted to do. I feel like people spend decades of their
I
life,
know.
and most of them only know, like, when they reach their
Yeah,
30s or even past that,
absolutely.
what they want. But you
Yeah.
knew, and you're still super happy with the path you picked.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
I'm very happy with it. There is moments like, I have like my little midlife crisis. Or like, oh, maybe I would like love to be a baker, maybe in another life. But right now it's
Yeah,
serving me really well, and I still think I'm doing a lot of good, and I love what I do.
awesome. And then you mentioned how you grew up in a Filipino household. So I kind of want to talk about some of the foods that you ate that growing up that your parents cooked. I grew up in an Afghan household. My
Amazing.
relationship with food was a bit interesting. Like my mom would always cook the food, right? And
Yeah.
in my culture, like the women really take a lot of pride in their food. They always want to feed you. It's like their
Yes.
main priority in life. And then Growing up, I kind of realized some of the food was really like rich in oils and salts
Hmm.
and how it wasn't so
Yes.
healthy for me. Um,
Yes.
but can you describe some of the dishes you grew up eating?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, I think you like it's pretty similar to how you grew up as well. Like
Hmm.
my mom is the Filipino one and my dad's actually Chinese. So,
Okay.
but he was like raised and born in the Philippines, so I feel like I was just raised very Filipino. But her dad, so my grandpa was actually a cook in the Navy. So
Oh,
she
wow.
also like loves cooking, like loves different cuisines, and I was really brought up like thankfully, and I realized this, recently that not everyone had this growing up, but like my mom worked as a nurse, still came home and like prepped and cooked really
Mm,
great meals. And it was a mix of Filipino dishes, but also like she loved different cuisines. So we would have like Italian, we would have Mexican, we have
mm,
like American food. Like she really diversified our palates, and I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, some majority Filipino foods would be, rich in like those like fattier like pork belly
mm,
meats and kind of like overdoing it with some of the added oils and sodium, like you said.
mhm,
And um, I think, previously, back when I was like really, really strict on like my diet growing up in high school, I didn't appreciate even like the time that was spent putting
mhm,
together these meals and also the ingredients. I didn't see it as like a way to balance. I kind of just saw it as like, this is so bad for me. Like, why is my mom making this for me? Like,
mm,
she's like killing our health. But like now, I see it as what it is. Like, it did have great sources of flavor and like nostalgia. But nowadays, I like to kind of add nutrition where I see
mhm,
fit. So a lot of times, like, yeah, like let's add a little bit more vegetables, maybe decrease not fully the rice portion.
mhm,
But like, let's make it in a way that's like healthy for us for better blood sugar control and have like some vegetables and fiber to kind of mitigate that and a source of protein to also help mitigate that. So I grew up with like, there's dishes called adobo, which I love, sinigang. And not saying that a lot of Filipino dishes don't have
mhm.
vegetables in it, but yeah, like it's primarily, those fattier meats cooked in a lot of oil, fried. We love our fried foods. And just kind of like nowadays, I like to still cook that. And I ask my mom for recipes, but I kind of tweak
Mhm.
things where I see fit. And just so that it can kind of still make me feel good afterwards instead of kind of like that, you know, when you
Yeah.
eat a lot of excess sodium or like, high fat meals, you kind of feel a little bit sluggish, like,
Mhm.
So now I kind of know how to balance it all.
Were you able to influence your parents' eating in any way? Were they
Yeah,
receptive to it? Because I struggle with that, so I need some advice.
hang in there, girl. Like, I definitely think like as a child, like as their kid, I feel like sometimes even as a registered dietitian, like I'll say
Yeah.
something and they're like, yeah, yeah. And like they don't believe me. And then like a friend will say something, they're like, oh my
Oh
gosh,
my
like
God.
Nancy said this. And I'm like, okay, I've been telling you that forever. But I will say, I think the biggest thing is just leading by example. Sometimes like when people hear things they're not as receptive, but if they see it and they like you have this inner light of like this is doing me really good, like I feel great, you're no longer using language of like oh like this is like too much salt or whatever, or like more so the feeling of oh I don't want to feel bloated after this, like I don't want to feel puffy, like kind of those like end symptoms, and just living it out for yourself and still like
Mm,
enjoying the food and them seeing you still are enjoying it even after all these tweaks. I think that also moves and speaks louder than a lot of things that you could potentially say. But my
mm,
parents definitely like incorporated a lot more vegetables, at least for my dad. We actually, the reason why I came up with the name of the roasted veggie is actually because my father, one Christmas, one Thanksgiving, I made roasted Brussels sprouts. And that was
mhm,
like that was like monumental to him. I roasted them with like, olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and like a little bit of honey, salt, pepper, garlic powder. And he was like, amazed by that, and he was like, I love that, like this is great,
oh,
like, and he actually started increasing his vegetable intake. He's been eating a lot of great like omega-3 rich fatty acids through fish. And these are like foods like he really enjoys. I think it's just more so like pushing like what do you love that's also really beneficial instead of like, we've been telling him for years about the rice, like you eat too much rice, blah blah blah. But like that's not gonna hit as hard as like, oh my gosh, wait, I really love this fish dish. I
Mm,
love when you make these Brussels sprouts, like kind of
mm,
honing in on like what they really enjoy versus like things that they kind of need to take out. Because if they eat more of the things that they enjoy, it kind of naturally already decreases some of the
right.
things that need to be improved.
My dad is definitely also more receptive to like food advice
Yeah,
than my mom, so I've also managed to get him to eat some healthier things like
that's awesome.
avocados and salads and stuff. But
Yeah,
my mom, yeah, I don't, she swears she'll never give up rice and bread. But yeah, working on that project to minimize it. But
yeah.
that's great advice to like give her things to replace it, not just
Yeah,
eliminate.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like I think my mom is the same way. It's interesting. Like she'll send like little messages to me about like her breakfast and it's always like a tea and like bread and like fruit. And like, Mama, like where's your protein? Like let's get in some eggs. And she's like, but like she's such a cutie. I love her. And she's been doing her
Yeah.
own like her own areas. And she's doing really good.
Nice. And then I kind of want to talk about the evolution of, yeah, being in a household where like food decisions were when you grow up, they're kind of dictated by your parents. And then you kind of spoke about a little bit, you alluded to it, like these comments you would receive that made you more conscious of these parameters you can control, right? Like food being one, watching like social media influencers and things like that. Um, let's say like in your later teenage years and early college, how did you make decisions about food? What diets did you follow? What factors influenced that?
Yeah. Okay, what diets didn't I follow? I think
Really?
since I was so in that world back in like high school, early college, I was just
Yeah.
so like,
You
okay,
dieted?
now,
Yeah.
yeah, like now I was like, wow, I have this independence to like actually follow
Mm,
all these things to the T. And I think I'm trying to like put myself back in the position when I was at that time, which feels like forever ago. But I was really excited. I know some people when they enter college, they feel a little bit like dreadful or like
mhm.
scared to like cook for
Yeah.
themselves. But like, since I was kind of already doing that at home, just under my parents' roof, and like still trying to like decide what they also wanted to eat and stuff, I felt like, yes, like this is my time to be free, but also be even more like strict with my food and go all in on these diets. So I was like
Mm,
eating, I tried being vegan for a while. I tried
mm,
vegetarian, I tried pescatarian. I even tried keto at one point just for
mm,
funsies and just to see if I could last. And of course, I never did.
mhm,
I'm trying to think what other diets like paleo I tried. I tried intermittent
mm,
fasting. So all that was done and did, but
mm,
it definitely didn't last. And again,
mhm,
while at school and in college, like there's a lot of prerequisites that we need to do. So, freshman, sophomore, even like some of junior year, like you're still kind of in those generalized classes. And it isn't until like senior year really that you hone in on
mm,
more like dietetic specific classes.
mhm,
So that's really when I was like, ooh, like
mm,
maybe even my approach, like I'm kind of looking at my habits, like is that actually really healthy for me? Like if the end goal isn't for sustainability and just
mhm,
making me feel good and kind of like why am I having these food thoughts all the time? Why do I
mm,
feel low energy? Like why am I losing control when I eat, the foods that I was trying to avoid versus just like having a balance with them? So that kind of started turning my gears a little bit. Um, Sorry, what was like the original question?
I'm kind of curious. You said you tried all these diets. What
Oh,
would be
yes.
like one word for why it wasn't sustainable, long term? So like when you went vegan, what
Oh,
was the
yeah.
main issue with that
I think
for
it
you?
wasn't for me. Like, I
Okay.
think the main
Okay.
issue is that like I had no aversions to meat. Like I grew up also eating meat. I think I didn't do it well. Like I was in a
Okay.
point where like I was still a college student. I was battling classes, volunteering, like working
Mm-hmm.
a job. And so you have to be really prepared. I don't think like if you're vegan or
Yeah.
vegetarian, like or doing these diets, like also like go if it's working
Yeah.
for you, do it. But like for me, it just didn't fit my life. It didn't fit my preferences. I never really felt like fully satisfied after these meals, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I was still missing things. And even being in school for dietitian, like it was just hard for me to get everything that nutrient wise
Yeah.
being vegan. And so it just accessibility, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
just it just really didn't work for me.
I had a distant cousin who had children. She was
Mhm.
raising like three, like 4, 2 years old, and she raised them vegan, and
Yeah,
they became very malnourished because she didn't realize it's not just about like choosing to be vegan, but you have
yeah,
to actively manage that diet, right?
you
So
do,
she
you do.
switched back to like them eating meat because she was just ignorantly like, oh, if I just go vegan, everything's gonna be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's the main point of like people don't know that the more you restrict, the more nutrients you also
Mm,
restrict and like maybe potentially missing out on. And instead of viewing food as like, well, that just raises cholesterol or like that, does that.
mm,
There's been, studies to show that, even food that isn't as great for us or is higher in fat also has these great sources of vitamin E, iron, like all these different things, vitamin B12 that sometimes you just like cannot get from certain foods alone.
mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where, that's kind of another topic, but supplementation and just being more knowledgeable
Mm,
on your levels and what nutrients you are missing out on if you are taking something or a food group away from your diet is also very
right.
important to know.
What about keto? You said you tried keto too,
Oh
right? What
yeah.
was the
Mhm.
main issue with keto for you?
I just so for keto for me, I just again didn't feel as satisfied. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Filipino girl. Like we love our rice and carbs, and even just like sometimes I think about it, I'm like, it even like keto diet also the rules around that makes you also restrict certain great
Mm-hmm.
health promoting fruits and vegetables.
Mm,
Not all of them, but majority of them, just because they are higher in carb. And I just there was a part of me I love diversity. I love,
mm-hmm.
having all these different foods on my plate. So it just also didn't work. And it kind of got a little bit expensive for
Mm,
me, just like always kind of paying for, great sources of fat, some proteins and like kind of just got
right.
a little bit pricey for me.
Yeah, I can't believe how expensive chicken breast is nowadays. I'm like, I
Oh
could
my
like
goodness,
buy
you're
a
killing
top like
me.
that.
No, I know. Even like, so I'm in New York and I saw the other day ground beef is 12.99. Like
Uh,
ground beef. I remember ground beef being like $4
oh
and I'm
my
like, why is
God.
only a pound 12.99 now? So I hear you.
Crazy.
It
And
is.
then I also wanted your opinion on intermittent fasting. I read this book. It was on like women and their hormones in food, and it talked about how intermittent fasting something like is ideally not for the the
Women.
women biology. And I tried it for some time, maybe a few months, like 4 or 5 months. My experience was that it just felt unnatural, and I knew it was a phase, like I was dieting, I guess then, and then that I would stop. But I was speaking to like a friend, like my sister's, like family time, and she said she's been intermittent fasting for 5 years, and what she does is like basically 20 hours or 19 hours of fasting and 4 or 5 hours of eating. Anyway, so what's your opinion on intermittent fasting? Because it's also like such a fad.
Yeah.
Uh,
I definitely think out of all the diets, intermittent fasting does hold a little bit more realistic doability for
okay.
most people. Like I think it's a little bit better managed by some people, but
Mm-hmm.
again, with any diet, I think it could also become very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, I want to preface that like I'm not saying like do it or don't do it, whatever works for that person, whatever works for that person, but what I have seen and know about intermittent fasting is that truthfully, I believe that naturally we intermittent fast anyway. If we have
Mm-hmm.
like a great eating schedule that is like consistent and regular, by the time we go to sleep and wake up for breakfast the next day, like that is a great already fasting period for us to kind of just like re-regulate, sleep, like rejuvenate and recover, and then we can eat again and start the day and like give us
Mm-hmm.
energy to do the things that we need to do. Personally, I have tried intermittent fasting, but I have found myself I am not that type of person that can just eat everything in 3 or 4 hours because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that also doesn't make me feel great if I'm trying to stuff 2,000 plus calories in 4 hours and that's
Mm-hmm.
all I can do. Like I was sluggish, I was kind of energy crash, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. So I really am more of like a spacing out, listening to your body cues, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that is like a opposing force to that. It's just like just because you need to
Yeah.
get everything in. And yeah, as a woman, I just feel like stable energy, like we all have different times of the month. And
Mm-hmm.
if sometimes our hormones can
Yeah.
fluctuate during that times of the month, and sometimes we are more hungry during certain times than not. And like for us to like not give our body what it needs at that time, to me, it's just like it's just not my philosophy and not the way I roll with things
Yeah.
anymore.
I I really love how you use the keywords like natural and feels good. I feel like
Yeah.
that's like increasingly becoming the metric I measure for like what choices I make, not just in my food, but in my
Nice.
life in general. And
Absolutely.
then just to comment on that friend, when I ask her why she does it, she doesn't use the words like it feels good and it's natural. She literally just says, "Oh, it's the only way I can keep maintain my weight. Otherwise, I'm gonna
Yes.
gain weight." So like, I feel like that energy, like constantly of like this, something you're not supposed to do or restricting. I feel like it just adds so much stress over time.
Oh
And
my
like our
goodness, yes.
relationship with food shouldn't be like that. So
Absolutely.
what's your approach to food now? What's your philosophy? How do you, yeah, what's maybe diet for lack of better term, but not in the traditional sense, but you know,
Yeah.
yeah, what is
Yeah.
it now for you?
So, literally, in one word, it's really just balance. Like, I
Okay.
truly believe if you don't have any restrictions or allergies or intolerances, like, you really are able to enjoy a well-balanced, diverse diet. And our body loves diversity. Like, we've seen it so many times with our gut microbiome studies. Like, diversity of all foods is really what helps, like, give us a healthy gut. And, like, increase that satisfaction too. And I think for now, my philosophy is really like mindfulness in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like I think knowledge is so important and empowering to know that, like, okay, there is structure needed in terms to support your best bodies, to support you feeling good and your overall health, like the foundations, the stuff that we feel like we already know, right? Like get your
Mm-hmm.
like lean proteins, fruits and vegetables, great for you, whole grains where you can, or carbs in general, like the main macronutrients, like healthy fats, right? But then also like balance that, make that the majority of your diet, and then balance that. It's okay to sprinkle in a cookie,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to have a girls' night, order takeout, order Uber Eats sometimes if you're feeling it because that's life. And I think life should be enjoyed. And food shouldn't be the dictating thing of like everything that you do, or the way
Mm-hmm.
you look is going to be the dictating thing of everything that you do. So I
Mm-hmm.
really try, my philosophy is like finding a balance of both, of like supporting your best self, but also eating foods that are both physically and soul nourishing for you.
So as you said all those things,
Yeah.
I got a bit overwhelmed. Like,
Did you?
I understand like
Yeah,
being balanced, eating, but I think this is the problem with a
I
lot
think so.
of
Yeah.
us. Like, you said all these amazing things, um, but then like, someone just watching a video that tells me to just eat meat every day, or like, Uber Eats that makes it super easy and solves my
Yeah.
problem right now. Like, how would I actually achieve this balanced diet, this mindfulness? Like, I'm betting the answer is more intricate than just don't eat for 20 hours and
I
eat
know.
for
I'm
4 hours.
like, that's a question that should be asked in one-on-one coaching. And like, I
Okay,
have
okay,
a balanced eating framework that I feel
okay,
like hones in on every pillar that needs to be able to achieve peace, balance with food, right? Because there's so many
okay.
layers to it, which like involves ditching like the all all or nothing mindset, having that all foods fit approach with food. So mindset's something that we hit on. Nutrition is something we hit on. And so like allowing them to be educated on like what really is a balanced plate. What even
Mm-hmm.
is that? We all talk about balance. So
Mm,
what does that entail? What does the food look like? Like how to meal prep food that you actually like, how to grocery shop and like not feel overwhelmed by all like the new food items that like are like, ooh, like you should eat this or like don't eat that, but like really what's it gonna be for you? And then also just learning how to eat out in social settings, body
mm,
image, sleep, exercise. So all of that is encapsulated in like my coaching package
okay.
and program. So it's a long-winded answer, and I know that's why it's not sexy and that's why it doesn't go viral because it really has so many layers to it. But that's health.
Yeah.
Like health
Mm-hmm.
isn't so straightforward. We're all very different in what we bring to the
Okay.
table.
Okay. No, that makes sense. This is such an intricate relationship, food, diet, etc. And we're as individuals often not completely empowered, so we should employ
Yeah.
expertise to help us figure that out. And there
Yeah.
is hope out there. But the right path, like many right paths, is the one that has more challenges to like actually arrive at the final solution that works. Okay, so I I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I thought maybe we would do some rapid questions, okay?
Ooh, okay.
These are just questions that are let's say less like very simple, you know, what the anyone would say on social media. So for instance, I know it depends, but if someone if
I know.
someone like I have two sisters, they constantly have this challenge where they can't fall asleep, they're scrolling social media, so they get up and they have to eat something, right? In the middle of the night. If someone has to do that, what is like the best late night snack? Yeah.
Okay, so definitely something like protein and carb. That's what I always kind of hone
Okay.
in on. So it could be cheese and crackers. It could be apples and nut butter. It could be yogurt and granola.
Okay.
Bare
Protein and
minimum.
carbs.
Yes.
Okay. Um
Bonus points
what
if you add a fruit or vegetable, but that's it.
okay.
I
Okay.
know that's rapid fire, so go ahead.
Um when you're super tired, you come home from work or a long meeting and you have to cook a healthy meal. Where do you find the energy to cook, or what is a go-to meal you have?
I say definitely leaning into very simple meals. And when I say simple, like I lean in towards popping a salmon or any sort of protein in the air fryer, season
Okay.
it how I already know how to season it, microwavable rice or potatoes or some sort of carb and a vegetable. I love roasted broccoli. So I just also put that in my air fryer. So it's
Mm,
like boom, done, like very low effort meal. But just making
okay.
sure you still have carbs, protein, color, and some olive oil, fat, avocado to top it off.
Okay. Awesome. And then what are the usual suspects in your grocery list? Like every week you go grocery shopping, what's always on your list?
Always, I need Rao's tomato sauce because we do make pasta a lot here. So I love that. That's my favorite pasta sauce. Some sort of fruit, and I usually like to shop in season, but like always, it's like bananas or it's like some type of berry. And I always get a
Okay.
green, whether it be spinach, arugula, kale, and always kind of like a fun little dessert because I know I'm gonna crave dessert, so I want to be prepared and like make sure it's not like just a baked good, but maybe I can have like a good, great dark chocolate on hand, or I'm trying to think of one that I've recently like. I actually got an Ninja Creamy, so I've been eating a lot of like ice cream. So I've
Okay.
just been getting a lot of like ingredients to make that a little bit more high protein, low added sugar. So that's been like
Um,
my little dessert nightcap.
nice.
Yeah.
What's your seasonal food right now? You mentioned seasonal. What are good seasonal foods to eat at this time of the year?
Oh my
If you're
gosh.
in North America.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously pumpkin. That's just I'm on the train. I'm so here for pumpkin. Pumpkin, Honeycrisp apples are
Okay.
really great. I have like five because I only bought a 3 pound bag, even though I thought it was only because I do online meal stuff. So I thought I was getting three individual apples, but no, I was getting 3 pound bags of apples. So I still have some and I've been loving them.
Nice.
Yes.
And then if someone wants to create a habit of cooking and eating healthy, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
Oh, I would say. This might be a hot take, actually. I would definitely say, first and foremost, get educated on food safety. So learn about cross-contamination, which temperatures you should cook your meats to. Just because
Okay.
I'm actually there's a lot of people that I think actually don't know that basic information of like,
Okay.
so I would definitely say that.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Okay. And then finally, what does a coaching session with you look like?
It looks like this. So I hop on a call with people. I offer a free call just to understand more about my philosophy and understand their goals and their, what they want to accomplish. That's a free call that I like to give out so I can understand you. And then once you decide that you want to work with me, we go virtual. We hop on these little sessions and we kind of talk about the roadmap for you. And we also provide education to help you get to that stage of balance and peace with food and help you achieve your goals. And we kind of talk about some barriers, and we're just there to support and motivate and educate you to reaching that point.
That sounds amazing. And where can people find you?
You can find me, oh gosh. People can
List
find me
all of
on,
them.
I don't like, you want to know all my handles? I'm pretty, like, mainly on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube as well at the Roasted Veggie. And you can find a lot of tips, recipes on my website and on my social media platforms at theroastedveggie.com.
Awesome. I'm going to put all your links in the show
Yes.
notes.
Thank
Yeah, this
you.
was an amazing, enlightening conversation. Thank you
Yes, it
so
was
much
so
for taking
fun.
the time.
Yeah, thank you for
Um,
having me. This was so fun.